when that dance begins to happen, we can create anything we desire when we find the harmony and balance. We just go up, 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 cycle, spiral, keep moving in what in ancient Egypt was called the process of becoming, because this is an eternal life that's ever flowing, just like masculine is ever flowing, feminine is ever flowing, because they are the wholeness of it all. And so when we can look at this ability to dance,
Hello and welcome to the New Thought Men's podcast, where we're building healthy masculinity in the world. It's great to have you with us. I'm Eamon, and today's guest is Reverend Elzia Sekou. Let me share a little bit about this wonderful man. Elzia is the senior minister at the Center for Spiritual Living in Denver, Colorado, and is a member of the CSL Ministers Council. He served on the CSL Diversity Committee and as a special focus young adult minister at Mile High Church. He conducts workshops on prayer, hermetics, ancient Egypt, Islam, and the science of mind and spirit philosophy. Elzia, welcome.
Welcome, welcome. I'm so glad to be here. What a great time to be here. And be alive right now.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And I loved your sharing on wholeness today. So for our summit, so let's just dive right in. This is kind of a topic that's really foundational to the New Thought philosophy and our New Thought understanding. Would you share just a little bit about wholeness and what that kind of means?
Yeah. I think, wholeness speaks for itself, right? It is whole, it is undivisible, it is complete within itself. And although the wholeness may contain many parts, it's still one. And so when I look at that now, I always use, because I think it's a perfect example that everyone can sink into, my body, I am one wholeness here. However, I got a heart and a lung and respiratory system and endocrine system, and I got all these different systems. We ain't even talked about the brain system yet, the neural network system, but they work together, yet they are endowed with a certain role, and they work together. If I'm running and my lungs sense that, Elzia is running, we need more oxygen, it doesn't ask the question. It senses the wholeness of it all, and it expands. It tries to get more air. Your heart starts pumping faster to get the oxygen and the blood throughout your body. So there's this dynamic dance. There's this unfolding of life itself that is always in motion and in wholeness that responds. And as soon as I slow down, my heartbeat comes back down. My respiratory breathing comes back down. It's always seeking that harmony and balance based on what's going on. And so that's what wholeness is right there. And when we apply it to masculinity, we're going to be way ahead of the game.
Yeah, that's so true. And what a beautiful metaphor of the body and how the body acts, and that we're whole and complete on the mental level, like you said, the brain level, the mental level, the emotional level. I know some guys are like, I don't know about that, but yes, we are.
Yes.
We experience it, we express it, no matter how much we try and kind of push it down and avoid it sometimes.
Yep.
Probably not you guys, but occasionally I've done that. And the spiritual self, that we are whole, perfect, and complete. We can't be separate from that we are created we are expressing in this wholeness of spirit. That even though the bodies may look different, we celebrate this diversity and this uniqueness, and everyone and everything is different. But at the same time, we're still, 99.9% the same stuff. We're still spirit. we're still blood and bones and have hearts and minds and feelings
Yeah.
and all of this
Yeah.
stuff going on. So it's a very small percentage of us. If we're looking at the whole, a very small percentage of us that is different and that makes us different and unique, which is a beautiful understanding and takes us into that experience of another concept and new thought of oneness.
You know, and there's this thing, this idea, and you maybe was going to ask this, but this idea of complementary, right? Wholeness represents complementary things. And you know, there's this quote that I call famous by Alan Watts that says, is there a such thing as a separate bee and a separate flower? Is it flower bee or bee flower? Is it one thing that's working together there to make the honey, to, you know, to pollinate and so when we look at things in wholeness, it spirals up, as above, so below, as below, so above. There's this correspondence that happens when you really step into wholeness that allows you to see the world in a whole different way.
Yeah. Synergy. It's the synergy between the flower, and the flower needs the bee as much as the bee needs the flower, you know.
Exactly.
And just like us as human beings, we desire this deep understanding within ourselves, that we are a part of this greater beingness, that we are a part of the expressiveness of the cosmos, and that everything is alive and everything is being in its exactly what it is. It's the flower, it's a planet, it's a bee, it's a universe, and here we are in it, a part of it, even though we're just a grain of sand in this vast beach and underneath the ocean and all of that, the sand in the entire world. You know, we are just a grain of sand in this universe, in this cosmos. But we're still a necessary piece of that wholeness. It would be missing something without our particular grain of sand.
Yeah. And when those individual grains of sand can come together in wholeness, now we can make a block, or now we can make a building, or now we can make anything, our creative energy, this cosmic dance of masculine and feminine, light and dark, up and down. When that dance begins to happen, we can create anything we desire when we find the harmony and balance. We just go up, cycle, spiral, keep moving in what in ancient Egypt was called the process of becoming. Because this is an eternal life that's ever flowing, just like masculine is ever flowing, feminine is ever flowing, because they are the wholeness of it all. And so when we can look at this ability to dance, right? If you think about Tai Chi, there's this exercise in Tai Chi called sticky hands, where you put your hands together. This in Wing Chun, a lot of different martial arts, but it's ability of moving back and forth with your partner, trying to feel the energy as they move forward, and so that you create this dance. Now, from a martial arts perspective, it goes into some different aspects, but the essence of it is, how do I understand the flow of something and know when to ease and when to give and when to pull and when to push?
Yeah, and like you were talking about in your sharing, how do we honor that flow of life? How do we, are we resistant to it? Are we fighting the current? Or are we simply surrendering and allowing, you know, that serendipity, that proper flow, being in that current to take us exactly where we need to be and want to be?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. And I know people say that all the time, but it really is a great question, being in Colorado, where we have these rivers that we get in these little boats and we whitewater raft the rivers when the spring comes. And it's just that. If you've ever went whitewater rafting where there's a current that's flowing, one of the first things they tell you is, don't go against the current. Go with the flow of the current, or else you're going to take a plunge. Right now, we're going to have to dig you out of the water. So it's that ability to be centered, have this harmonious aspect to yourself that allows you to move with the river, with the current. to surrender to it and just be aware and be present. Because when that happens, that's when the intuition comes in. That's when the synchronicity comes in. That's when the things that understand each other at a level beyond our consciousness. Because we know that there's a bigger part of us that's unconscious, that's conscious. So if we're relying on the conscious to try to drive the whole thing, we're not driving on all cylinders. So this ability to surrender and allow that to come forth and move and you just be in the moment, things happen. Things happen, and they happen with ease and grace.
Yeah, then we get to be in that wholeness, and it's not an efforted thing. Our intuition tells us, our heart tells us, our gut tells us, our brain tells us, our soul tells us. Yeah. And so we're actually opening up to this greater experience of understanding and co-creation, really, with the universe.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Beautiful stuff. And being able to, this is another thing that you said, respect all as the wholeness of life, to respect all as that wholeness and necessary piece. It kind of goes back to that beach, like every bit is necessary.
Yeah.
But other thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, in religious science, as taught by Ernest Holmes, he had this seed, soil, plant image for us to understand, right? This whole spiritual way, this metaphysical, mystical way, if you will, of exploring life. And so in that state, we understand, again, it just speaks to this masculine, feminine, this interchange of energy. Unless I take the seed and put it in the soil and cover it up, which puts it in darkness, and then apply pressure to it through the rain and the sun, and something inside the seeds awakens to this process of life. And where at one point it was hard as a seed, it now becomes open and released as an expression of what is traditionally considered feminine. And so we begin to see right at the very beginning this thing called life that moves up, and that one thing needs another. And the thing that looks as if it's an obstacle is a portal to a new beginning. It's a portal to a new way of looking at life. And don't we need that today? We need both masculine and feminine, everybody, to begin to open up to a new way of expression, to create and co-create at the higher level.
We're ready for it. We're primed. It's a new, even though there's seeming resistance in society right now to this, upward spiral, to the evolution of masculinity and evolution of femininity too, that we're all being called to this greater expression within ourselves. And I think it goes back to wholeness. It goes back to even kind of almost transcending the masculine and the feminine, to just be whole, to not have to label it in some ways as masculine or feminine just because society labels it that way, but to even transcend those societal labels, to step outside of the man box, as it were, to step outside of those roles and all those old methods, old ways, and to step into this new possibility. Like you said, the seed has been planted for a long time. It's been watered. Society has been watering this change has been coming for a long time now, and we're really truly ready for it. Even though maybe parts of our society are like, no, we want to go back to the old way, and that's fine. We know that sometimes evolution looks like, 5 steps forward and 2 steps back, and then another 5 steps forward.
One of my greatest teachers now, I think it's always been, but I'm honoring it more now, is this idea of looking at a 14 billion year scripture called the universe. Mm-hmm. And when I look at that story, if you will, however it's told, from any perspective, religious, metaphysical, physical science, it started at a point from what we can see that there was this one thing that goes by many names. But at some point, there was an impetus, there was a primal cause that exploded, that unfolded, that began to spiral, that came from, at the beginning, dust and gas and all of that. And now we sit here as individuals talking dust and gas. Because that's what was in the beginning. We can look at the records. And to show you that oneness of it, for those of us who take vitamins every day, what are we doing? We're taking minerals. We're taking magnesium and iron and zinc and copper, things we call earth and dirt. However, we need those earth and dirt things within our body because there's a oneness. We're back to the bee and the flower. There is a wholeness there that when we begin to understand that, we respect that, right? And we act differently and we move to a different level of the spiral of becoming, because we will be changing. I mean, if you just think about where we were 50 years ago, in any aspect of society, pick one, right? And that idea you was talking about, the differences, you know, we have to come up with the language to navigate, right? Because without down, up has no meaning whatsoever. Up only has a meaning in relationship to down, or vice versa. So when we can step into that kind of understanding of how this thing flows and how it, and eventually, as you said, we get to the point to where we can transcend the labels, because the labels are good, but eventually they lock us into a prison. They lock us into a way of thinking, and we don't see as much as we can see. They say there are about 40 billion bits of information coming into our brain every second, but there's only like 2,000 bits of that become conscious. What if we can just open that a fraction? What could we create by just understanding, getting rid of some labels, and being curious about the harmony, the beauty, and the rhythm of life?
I like that. I like that. Yeah, let's get more curious. Let's get more. What's possible here? What can we do?
Hey, Eamon here. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. You know, being a man these days is tough. We feel pressure from relationships, our friends, other men, from society, and even from ourselves. It can be lonely and we can feel isolated. I know I have. 15% of men in America have reported having no close friends, and 73% have 5 or fewer friends. How many other men do you talk with regularly about the most important things in your life? Well, we have a free video and a PDF on how to create deeper conversations and friendships with the men in your life. Click the link in the description below. Also, please rate and review this podcast, or like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. It helps us reach more people with uplifting content like this. Thank you. Appreciate it. Now back to the podcast.
How can we show up under this understanding of wholeness as men or as women, you know, to not need to polarize, to not need to push it this way or that way. Oh, and label it, you know, these are, masculine traits are taking out the garbage, you know, and feminine traits are, you know, it's like, I think our society has really transcended a lot of those old labels and, you know, old roles, old methods, I think, and we're wanting to let go of them, and we're working on letting go of them. And just like it is for an individual, even more so for society, it takes some time. It takes, you know, consciousness. It takes effort to do the inner work, so that then the collective wisdom, the collective understanding of us as humans, that can trickle down in that and really start to show up in bigger ways. through the collective wisdom and collective expression.
And so, we ask, where do we start to embody it? And I think the way to start embodying that is to start with the body. We have to understand that ancient saying that this is a temple, the body temple that houses the spirit of the divine. And just like everything else, when I'm in tune there, I'm in tune more with the spirit, because we there's body and spirit, right? To get them in action and flow, so this idea of embracing or embodying, that's why we always hear that word in lots of traditions, that we have to embody these teachings. They're simple, but we have to embody them. We have to experience them. I could try to explain to you what an apple tastes like all day. It's red and outside white, and I can go through all the descriptions of, but until you eat the apple, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Yeah. But once you do, I can say and you'll say pull, because that energy, there'll be a vibration there. And so for me, one way to begin, two things I love is, I used to like to run. I walk now. I can't run as much as I used to. But between walking and yoga, and more so yoga in terms of finding a balance, because just a slight alignment in your posture or how you stand, same thing with running, a slight adjustment of your gait when you're running, it takes the stress off the body. It's easier to maintain. Everything is there. And so that, again, that dance has to be learned. And we learn it by understanding the body, which houses the temple, and then those get in sync. And then we are able to see things differently. We create differently, and we become something different.
Beautiful. Yeah. How do we find our alignment? How do we, I think that's one of the steps, is like, what really the deeper question, what works for you? Yes. What helps you be in that, yes, equilibrium, that balance, that perfect state that allows, going back to what we were talking about, that allows that flow state to then show up, for the ease on the body when we're running, we're in that flow, or feeding it the proper nutrition that it needs to really thrive, instead of just survive. What will help my body really thrive? What thoughts will help my mind thrive, my heart and my emotions, my feeling state really thrive, instead of watching things like the news, or things that will put us in a state of fear, that will activate this reptilian brain back here that says, fight, flight, run away, freeze. We were actually able to move that energy up into the prefrontal cortex and use that mind, or even, activate that pineal gland, which is the third eye, that spiritual seeing, or that deeper seeing that we have access to when we move into that flow state, when we take the breath, when we move into that receptive state and are open to it.
You bring up again, something from the teachings of religious science by Ernest Holmes, Science of Mind. In the first statement, full statement in the book, he says, I look forward to the day when science and spirituality walk hand in hand from the visible into the invisible. Yeah. And that's what we are now. We have, we have all the tools to do that, to understand that. We always thought prayer and meditation was a good thing, and some people, but now physically we got all kind of scopes and things to put on our body to understand that when you pray, something physically, electrochemically happens in your body. When you meditate, something physically happens, because this whole idea is an embodiment of what we are to do, to be whole, to be centered, to be fully masculine, to be fully feminine, so that we have the dance. And I think, the more we can begin to be in that dance, I mean, that's the essence of it. When you look at the yin and yang, or it is a dance that they're doing. When you look at the rising of the sun and the setting and the rising of, it's a dance between those two, one reflecting off the other. It's a way of living that honors everything and that understands that it's all together. And sometimes it does get out of balance, right? You think about you put water in the sink and you just cut it on, it's chaos. You're looking at it in relationship to the drain. But pretty soon that chaos starts spinning and you begin to see this spiral of life that's happening everywhere, and how we're going from one thing into another, a portal, or this process of in and out, up and down, that creates the movement and this very thing that we call life that has to have that energy flow of masculine and feminine. Just needs to be healed a little bit right now.
Yeah. And that's hopefully one of the things that we're doing is by really looking at these old roles, looking, at these old ways that of unhealthy masculinity that are kind of in our face right now, that society and even politically is kind of showing up in a big way. To show us, like, is this what we want? Like, it's almost the universe. Like, is this what you want?
Yes.
Oh, you don't want that anymore? What do you want? What are you about?
Yes.
Do you want more love? You want more abundance? You want more joy? You want more connectivity? You want more community? You want more happiness, fulfillment out of life? I think a lot of those questions are up for us as individuals, but also as a society too, which allows us to really go deep in it, and really explore it. And I think it's just beautiful. Some of the younger generations are just coming in with this sort of stuff. They don't have as much baggage around the, gender or roles or all of this stuff, which is really, I think, shaking things up for the older generations that are like, hey, wait a minute. Don't move my cheese, as I was talking about with another person yesterday. Who moved my cheese? Don't change things. Well, change is inevitable.
Yeah.
We have to embrace it, or we can resist it and, stay stuck or try and stay stuck. But
I'll suffer the consequences.
Yeah, suffer the consequences. Exactly. And Elzia, I loved what you shared in your talk. You shared 3 pillars of masculinity that were really supportive. And the first one, I'm just going to ask you to expound on these, is be guided by wisdom. Be a wisdom keeper.
Yeah.
Is number 1.
Yeah. Wisdom is there's information, there's knowledge, and then there's wisdom. In today's society, we have lots of information, and lots of things that those knowledge, if you will, that's made up from those things. But the wisdom of it is, how does it go together? I can take any pieces of thing and make something of it, but what's the wisdom of it? How do we take the information, the knowledge, and turn it into a living thing, a wisdom that knows? There was a story about several of these typhoons that come in when they have the earthquakes, and we get these massive typhoons come in. And it said in one of them, when the ocean started receding, all of the humans were fascinated and walked down to the beach, and all of the animals ran to the hills because they understood from the wisdom that that's not normal. The earthquake has caused the water to flow in an extreme way. We need to balance it if we're going to be around, and that's what wisdom is. But knowledge and information is great, but it has to be applied to wisdom, I think. So when we do that, we can get into a better flow. We can look at masculinity, life itself, as always taking this stuff and living it.
Beautiful, which kind of takes us into The second pillar, being in the flow of life, allowing, surrender, and being still.
Yeah. Again, I go this idea of stillness and motion. If you've ever seen Tai Chi, if you've ever seen a Tai Chi master, they're flowing, but the stillness, I mean, when they're flowing, the only thing is moving is that one little aspect of the body that should be flowing. It's the wrist, it's the elbow. Everything else is perfectly still. But from that stillness, that Tai Chi master can go into a more forceful, more direct, and a more dance, if you will, of what that looks like, what stillness and motion and flow looks like. And that's again the balance of life. If we have too much sun and not enough rain, we see what happens in some desert areas, what the consequence of that is. See, the thing is, the laws of the universe are impersonal. We've heard that thousands of times. But the wind doesn't care who's in the way. If you're in the way, I'm coming, right? And so there's a wisdom of that allows us to begin to say, okay, how do I get into the flow and the stillness and know and observe, become the observer, and know, as my favorite song, Kenny Rogers, know when to hold them and know when to fold them.
Nice. Yeah. That's old school.
Yeah.
Beautiful, Elzia. Absolutely. Being in that flow. And then, the third pillar you mentioned was to be whole and complete.
Yeah.
Break the molds of old. Be whole in your masculinity, in your femininity, in your all that you are, your authenticity.
Yeah, and that wholeness really, if I would give it another term or another title, would be harmony. How do we find the harmony? Because I love metaphors, and I think about, I love jazz, and if you go to a jazz club and the band is just there and they're getting ready to introduce and play, they're just practicing their scales and getting their instrument together, and it does not sound very harmonic oftentimes. And a symphony is definitely a good place. The symphony, you got all these instruments, and they're just, the oboes, the tubas, everything is just doing their thing until the conductor steps up and raises the baton of oneness, if you will, and says, let's play together in harmony. Understanding when to rise in sound, when to go down in sound, when to be soft, when to be hard, and allow that music, that symphony of life to happen. That's what happens on that third thing. You become in harmony. And in that harmony, I can highlight the flutes and they can come back down. I can highlight the drums and they can come back down. And I can do all these different pieces depending on the dance or the song we're playing, so that no one feels left out. Everybody understands when it's their turn to be front and center. And when we can do that, we're going to solve all the problems that are currently facing us. There'll be some new ones, but those that are currently facing, we'll figure it out.
Oh, beautiful, Elzia. Yes, harmony. Oh, love that. Love that. And you also gave us some practice, a practice to kind of, how do we deepen in this? And those were in 3 parts too. So first one was get a journal.
Yeah. And you can call it whatever you want. If you don't want to call it a journal, you can call it a Sketchpad. If you don't like Sketchpad, call it a Doodle book. There's one thing about art, which is writing included, is that to get into it, you have to get out of yourself. You just got to let it flow. If you're painting or if you're drawing or sculpting or anything that's artistic or creative is what it really is. It allows you to get beyond the labels and beyond the boxes and beyond those things that keep us locked in a present state of mind. So with the journal, start writing. Sometimes in my journal, I'll start writing, and then in the middle of a sentence, I'll start drawing. And then when I just start doodling. And so Now I got like a hieroglyphs, if you will. I got to come back and decipher this thing. But each time it gives me the energy to do it. And I see something different, like we all do. And that's the beginning of unlocking the deeper aspects of what the masculine is.
Yeah, and that brings us to number 2. Set that daily spiritual practice. Set that practice, because it's not about like a one-time shot. It's not like, oh, I tried meditating it once and it didn't work. It is through that passage of time and the consistency and the discipline of doing it,
Yes.
that wisdom starts to come out.
Exactly.
That deep wisdom that you talked about.
Yeah. When we look at the term, we throw the term lightly around master, right? Or sage, because sage is an even higher level of mastery, right? Because at that point they become magical and mystical, but to reach that state, it requires practice. In the ancient systems, in the ancient times, there were these things called, and you're going to love this, rites of passage. And those rites of passages were systems, were cauldrons, if you will, that allowed you to move your consciousness from one level of existence to another. And that's what the process of becoming. We started as a seed. We get a little pressure, that rites of passage program. We burst open to a seedling, and now we're looking at the world totally different. And then we go through another one, and like the plant, the sun comes out and it starts stretching, and pretty soon it bears fruit. And then pretty soon from that fruit, we go back and start again, this cycle. And so that's why there were rites of passages for before you were born, when you got into seniorhood, and when you went into the ancestral realm. There's still another ritual to keep the energy connected, because it's energy. We know it never goes away. It changed forms and all that, but it's always here. So when we can look at world in that wholeness again, we can begin to do that with discipline, with practice, and we'll see the results.
Well, you definitely mentioned one of my favorite words, rite of passage, or processes. Because it honors the organic evolution of our lives. It honors, like, if we really look at it, there's really 7 major rites of passages and tons of small ones, from your birth, your childhood, your teenage years, young adulthood, midlife, elderhood, and the final one, leaving this body, our death. Which is, and to be able to honor those, to be able to, take those into a sacred space and not just let them pass by. And, in midlife, you're like, oh, I'm unfulfilled. I want a shiny car, or I want a new relationship, or I want, all the things that we're looking externally. But if we take that internal process that's going on and really honor it, really allow a threshold crossing of saying, well, yes, oh, you're turning 13, or you're turning 19 or 20, like, oh, that's, you're really entering into a new time. And to have mentorship and to have support through all of those processes in life. I mean, I just talked with Michael Benjamin on him being basically helping people make that transition as a hospice chaplain, and to be able to hold them and be able to love them and be able to honor that and really create a sacred space around it. Oh, how beautiful, that process can be then. And any of those processes, even those, little rites of passage that, driving a car, or, becoming a full adult, being able to vote, all of these things that we go through in our lives, letting go of jobs, getting new jobs, all of the processes, getting married, having children, having, their children and great grandchildren, as you were mentioning earlier. What a beautiful thing to honor all of those transitions in such a even a ritualistic or a sacred way, to be able to allow the psyche, allow that inner world to go, oh, I get this, and we'll make the adjustments internally so that the external world is now different.
It allows that internal expression to have an outward display, right? And in a lot of cases, those markers of when the right are physically built into the system. This system, there's certain times when you know things need to happen, right? Consciousness need to change, right? And that idea of how do we do that? And this is the beauty, if you can get this. You came up with 7 levels of rites of passage, but you know, I could take each one of those 7 and break them down into 7 more. And then I can break those down into 7 more. And so now we begin to see the infinality and the encompassing of all things in life itself. We look at it to understand it in certain parts, but once we do that, we allow it to dance back together. And so we begin to get deeper and deeper in the understanding by getting more information, some more knowledge, and working with it. Be curious so that it becomes wisdom.
Oh, thank you for that sidebar. That was beautiful, Elzia. But I want to get back to our because people are like, what's number 3? Wait a minute.
Yes.
So we got get a journal, set the daily spiritual practice, and then don't forget this part, review and reflect on what you created.
Yeah. We know all things are creative, right? And we know in religious science that, you know, as a man thinketh, so is he, and as he continues to think, so shall he remain. And so if we do not begin to examine this thing called life and how we're engaging with it, we'll repeat the same thing over and over again, be different people, different place, but the exact same outcome is presenting itself because we have to review. It's, you know, it's kind of like the movie Groundhog Day, right? In Groundhog Day, every day he woke up, golly, the same thing, but each day he made a little something different. He reviewed, he started learning. Oh, I did that last time, didn't turn out too well, not doing that again. And so he began to have this dance with life of what it means to be whole and find somebody and all of that stuff by reviewing, he had to first become an observer, because first he was on autopilot, he was just going. But then he said, wait a minute, this thing and boom, he fell into line with that dance of the universe. And that's the third one. How do we do that? And that's how we do it. We just review it, we look at it, and we learn from our past misgivings, if you will.
Yeah. And those are, you know, these are all part of these evolutionary cycles that we go through, not only as individuals, but as a society. And I'd say we're smack dab in the middle of a powerful one right now, societally, as well as individually. You know, we can call it like, I mean, you can look to spiral dynamics as one of those ways of calling it. But, you know, speak a little bit more on that, Elzia, evolutionary cycles.
Yeah, I love that, because it's all, you know, once you get in it, it's just their flow, you know. So we look at life, we say life is 360 degrees, right? And so if we're spiraling, at every level, we come to a point 0, right? And at that level 0, at that frequency 0, or that degree of 0, the frequency, the vibration is the same, regardless of the level. But it's at a higher octave. It's like music, and you got a low C and a middle C and a high C. They're all C, but they're at different levels on the spiral. And so they have the same resonant tone, but what you hear is a little different because of but anything in line with C, regardless to high C, low C, anything with that vibration will begin to vibrate. There was an old Memorex tape commercial with Ella Fitzgerald, famous jazz vocalist, who was able to shatter a wine glass by hitting the high C, because they were the same resonance. And when she woke that resonance up, it happened. And it's the same thing. So as we go around the spiral, we will find these synchronistic moments. Sometimes they say, are these deja vu moments, because the energy is the same, but the situation is different. And if we respond in that point, like we did before, same thing gonna happen. And we will keep spiraling until we understand that it is a dance, it's a spiral of life. And there are certain frequencies and vibrations and alignments that allow us to easily keep spiraling one way or the other.
Yeah, those old habits, patterns, those old programmings, those old neuro pathways that are automatically we find ourselves going down, rather than choice, which is all what New Thought is about. All what this philosophy is about is we are at choice. And it might be that split second choice before that, that neural pathway gets activated that says, oh, this is that, and that split second with, wait a minute, this is different. This is something new. Okay, something new. Let's have a different neural pathway activated, and allows us then to have that, not that same spiral, but to go up to that next spiral and have a different, oh, that's a different tone. I love the metaphor that you use of, the low C and the high C and the middle C. That's so beautiful, because it really is like that. It's like we're taking these same patterns, and our psyche and our heart and our soul want to experience something different. They're waiting for that moment for us to say, you know what, this pattern isn't working for me anymore. How can I have a different outcome? And it's that simple. You got to make that choice and say, I want a different outcome.
And
then using that wisdom, using that understanding, using all of these tools, we eventually find our way into that new possibility that we've been waiting for, and that's been waiting for us.
Yeah, and you just, kicked me back to the symphony, right? So in the symphony of life, right, all this has to be exactly what you just said. But the interesting thing about music, and looking at music in that way, I can play something that's in sharp or something that's flat. They can know, because in addition to C, the middle C, low C, high C, there's C sharp, there's C flat, there's C natural. So there's all these expressions of C. And when the symphony comes in, we can pick whether we're in a certain modality of playing, and we can hit notes within that same octave range or within that same key, or whether it's sharp or flat, and it is moving at such a pace that everybody can feel it. Like because ultimately that's what I think we have to get into, this emotional, feeling, biochemical way of living that we honor and listen by practice and doing it right.
So get a journal.
Yes.
Get a journal. Start today. Oh, Elzia, I always enjoy our conversations. This is so rich. I just so appreciate you, brother. Though we are kind of at our ending time here. And I want to ask you, your perspective on this final question is, what does divine masculinity look like in the 21st century?
Wow. That's a good one. And when I think about it, I think, to be very succinct, it means, how do we begin to let the inner express outwardly, and let the outwardly educate and make the internal aware of what's going on. We look at certain situations from an external point of disasters or whatever, and we have a closed door. We'll play and say, oh yeah, that's so sad, but there's nothing internally moving us to do something different, right? And from a divine perspective, there's always this expression and understanding that there's one thing that is always prime, and that's life. Life is prime. Everything else is optional. And so as we begin to have births and deaths and all these things within this context of life, we understand that the divine part of it is to overcome, to understand the flow of the energy, to come in love, to come in balance, to come in harmony, so that this continuation of this thing called life continues.
Beautiful, beautiful, brother. Yeah, it is. It's what we've been talking about, the evolution, that evolution. Oh, Elzia, so great to have you here. So a little bit, you can find Elzia at csldenver.org.
Yeah.
And he is a spiritual leader there. If you're ever in Denver, definitely stop by and check it out on a Sunday. Beautiful stuff, beautiful community. I'm so grateful for you being here today, Elzia.
Yeah. I love this every time we do it, because it, again, there's that dance between you and I that happens, that we have things situated, but there's also the flow of energy that always happens, and for me it's always rich and loving and complementary and being exactly what we're talking about, the wholeness of life and the wholeness of masculinity. So I appreciate you and thank you so much.
Thanks, bro. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining Elzia and myself today. There's more to come, so stay tuned in.